Welcome to the Underground, my little underground with Peter A.
It's My Little Underground. I'm Peter A. This week on the show, we have Mike Sheffield of New York based experimental ambient project Clairaudience. And Mike talked about the brand new album, Letters from Emptiness, changes in the New York DIY music community over the years, his love of electronic music, and so much more. Please help me welcome Mike Sheffield of Clairaudience to My Little Underground.
My little underground.
I know you from Heaven's Gate, kind of a staple in the New York DIY scene. When I was getting into a lot of the bands coming out of New York, Heaven's Gate was among the first. And can you tell me what you've seen change in the New York DIY scene over the last like decade or so, or since you started to get into the music community here?
Yeah, that's so much has changed since that point,
Yeah.
um, in so many different ways. Things tend to work in cycles, I believe, but definitely the energy and the people. New York people come and go a lot. Some people stay here the whole time, other people come and go. So you always have this transientness to New York in general. But then with the DIY venues that came and now mostly have gone, except for a few great exceptions now. And it's starting to blossom again a bit with the DIY scene in New York. Um, and it never really went away completely ever, but it comes in these waves where there'll be more going on. Of course, New York became more of a dance music hub than an indie rock hub in the sometime in the mid the tens 2010 period. I'm a huge electronic music fan, so I was very much in riding that wave and enjoying it. But yeah, just like a completely different culture than the more experimental and rock centric music that was happening in like the mid aughts. There was always like a little bit of this, you know, the techno scene like from the 90s that was like still alive when it was like really thriving before it started thriving again. And there was like, murmurings of it during that time in the early aughts, but it was nothing like it is right now. So that also just like completely changed the dynamic of New York music. Um, and then the pandemic, of course, the pandemic being a huge changing factor. The whole neighborhoods completely were changed up over the course of a year or two. Parts of Manhattan, the companies left, and just new companies went in, new people moved in, people left, people came back. Some people didn't come back. Some people are going to have a rural lifestyle because of that period. And then you get all this new energy into the city. Um, but New York's always been a place of change. When I was first came here, there were CBGBs, and that was a memory pretty quickly after I started living here, and that was like a staple for so long. So there's always something that's fading away. But right now, I feel like there's so much going on, and a lot of the energy that I felt in the mid to late 2000s, I feel like you're seeing kind of like an echo of that in a lot of ways. In some ways, a lot more palpable, and in other ways, more kind of a subtle echo. That's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but
Do you feel like the communal aspect of the music community, at least the portion that you're a part of, is more I guess communal and not so siloed and isolated? Do you feel that way?
there's a lot of micro communities, um, and I'm lucky to be a part of a few of them. But I would never say that I know like more than anybody else that's kind of engaging with stuff. Um, Also, my demographic is a little older now, but I love things that kind of bring uh, kind of bring everybody out. But like, I feel like now that I'm in my late 30s, I'm not at the same parties as someone in their early 20s. Um, sometimes I am, but most of the time, no. Uh, and just that alone, you have so much of these communities that are happening that I can live here and have witnessed a lot, but like I would not say I'm a part of a lot of these current communities that are going, and that's great. That's like that the city is thriving if that's the case.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to um the sound of Heaven's Gate, right? It was very like very post-punk, still in that experimental range, but very, rock centric, right? And now what you're doing with clairaudience is almost the polar opposite, very experimental, electronic, drone, ambient kind of stuff. Talk to me about that transition of artistry for you, because you said you're a big electronic music fan, so what this was just a natural progression for you then.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah, this was a kind of an echo of something I had thought of much earlier. I'd always loved like electronic music. When I was 20, I studied abroad in Prague, and I lived really close to a dance club, and I got hooked really quickly upon moving there, and I was just going like multiple times a week to see like a lot. At the time, it was like drum and bass music, but just a lot of experimental electronic music when I was there. And I really care, my other friends at the time were also studying abroad, were like in Berlin, and they were getting into techno. So we all kind of came back from this like time in our 20s with like this taste of electronic music that we had seen in Europe. Maybe some of us had been to like Chicago or Detroit, or been to, like kind of been to some more New York events, but they were still kind of more niche at the time. But we know it like we'd liked this music. So like, even when I was like in Heaven's Gate, I definitely listened to a lot of dance music records. And I was like, that there was always this idea. There's always like, Andrew Weatherhall and My Bloody Valentine, and there's this, Happy Mondays, and like the movement that happened in England where it was the shoegaze bands kind of making the dance music and Primal Scream, and that had always been kind of this blueprint in my head and a lot of people's heads, I think, who are really into shoegaze music, is that shoegaze music is rock music, but it is also dance music. There's a lot of shared ground with it, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. Ambient music, down tempo music, kind of evolved, also being offshoots of shoegaze music. Just a lot of that stuff that was happening in the UK in like the early to mid '90s. And so when there was this like boom of shoegaze music in New York City, it was definitely maybe a little more rock oriented or like even punk oriented. But I think a lot of those people who were making it were equally still like listening to like down tempo music and ambient music and some electronic music. So that had always been kind of an idea with Heaven's Gate, even, unsuccessfully, but our second record, Transmuting, I had a lot of the tracks bounced to stems, so I could like send them to electronic music producers to like to make remixes of. Like even at that time, we wanted to like engage dance music culture. But then clairaudience is like at the time before, like right before I started Heaven's Gate, I like had made a demo in like one of my first New York apartments. That was just like I think on like a phone, and it was just like four tracks of like kind of feedbacky guitar music that I had called Clairaudience, and I recorded it in one night, and it was before Heaven's Gate, but it was like maybe I had like kind of an idea of like something I could do with it, and then I basically just put it to bed for a long time and forgot about it. I didn't even think about it. Um, or it's just it's not something that was like that I had like kept in mind or had a plan for. And maybe 3.5 years ago, um, a very close friend of me and Lonnie passed away. And when that was happening, I was looking for remembrances from her. So I was looking in like external hard drives. I was looking for like pictures. I just wanted to kind of like find some memorabilia, somehow way to kind of commemorate her or to kind of think about her. And it was like looking through this memorabilia that I found the 4 track like folder on an external hard drive from like 2010 or something, or 2009 or somewhere around then. Uh, that was clairaudience, and I immediately, like, the name resonated with me. I was like, oh yeah, I totally would want to call a project that. And it was almost like that this message that I was getting from my past self that I didn't even remember, but then slowly, like, the night started coming back to me. It was like winter time, and it was like really cold out, and I was just like in my room, and I was just recording, and I just like started to piece it together. Um, and so I had, Heaven's Gate had been inactive for a pretty long time, but I, was starting to talk to some of the old members again more frequently. And I was putting this release together. I had a, so, well, maybe I should, I kind of skipped over a part where I recorded this music that was based on that original demo, but that was not that demo. That demo is just kind of like a springboard. I probably will never release it, but that 4 track phone EP was what led to me recording the what would become clairaudience. Um, in that time after I found that EP. And then I brought in Lonnie, and I brought in Jess from Heaven's Gate. And then I also had our friend Kieran play electronics on it. So I was trying to, it was a solo release, but I was also trying to bring in some other folks. And then I also had all this, from the time, probably like around like mid Heaven's Gate, I was starting to produce electronic music. So I had developed more skills and production skills and techniques. So I was able to kind of use those while making this type of shoegaze, ambient, down tempo music. So it was kind of just like a avalanche of different complements of different influences. But it definitely started with that, finding that 4 track EP.
So that this 4 track EP that you recorded a while ago that you found digging through your hard drives, this was did you build off of this foundation, or was it just, you used it as just a quick reference to building a bigger idea?
It was like the idea,
Okay. Yeah.
and it wasn't that, like, nuanced or, crazy of an idea, or a detailed of an idea. It was just, I was making ambient guitar feedback music, and I think at the time I was just using like a delay pedal, but I was getting some pretty cool sounds out of it, and I felt really passionate about it. And I knew there was a part of me that wanted to, be using the guitar more, less as an instrument and more as like a tone and more as a color. And that is always something I was trying to achieve with the guitar playing in Heaven's Gate. Kind of just have this guitar that really made you have these like kind of different deep tones and different feelings. And so then just to have a project that was solely based as like the premise is like, oh, that guitar that makes you feel something is actually like the whole point.
You talked about skills you developed. What skills that you kind of built the muscle for?
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's a very little known program called Ableton.
Oh.
But I spent a lot of time with Ableton. I think it was
Is
something
that AI? No, I'm just kidding.
it was something I resisted for a while because I knew that everyone used Ableton, and it was, on everyone's computer. And I was like, oh no, I'm gonna like make hardware electronic music. I'm gonna program it on my Volcas or my Electribes. And eventually I finally decided that I should get over myself and learn Ableton, and it was such a delight. Um, I had like started off recording with Pro Tools, and I think because I knew Pro Tools, I was like, oh no, that was the only type of software I should use when I'm recording, and maybe that was my reluctance to Ableton. But yeah, it's a great program, and I remember even like, I like finding out about electronic music. Um, it's when you don't have any familiarity with it, and especially like back in the day, I feel like nowadays everything has been more normalized. Like you can, the average person probably knows what a CDJ is. But I remember going to those early like electronic music shows and watching the like, especially like a jungle DJ. I had no idea what they were doing up there. They were just standing there. They had the shiny thing in front of them, and then like I knew when they were putting on records, they were putting on records. But like, what was this other thing they were doing? Were they like playing this music live? Were they playing tracks? Like I didn't understand it. And so I think like just having that as like this it's something to strive for, and then you like you dial it back, and you want to think that you know they are doing the most complicated thing because the music they are playing is like the most complicated and beautiful music, and then you find out that it's actually way more simple, but also just as nuanced. um, yeah, so I guess like learning that you didn't like that all these DJs were using Ableton, like these people making these like crazy beautiful albums, or like making like winning Grammys, and or just like super occult classic albums. They're being created on Ableton. They're not even using synthesizers like half the time. Like a lot of them are, but I remember talking to a producer at a rave I went to, and I was like, "Oh man, I really love this track you did. Like, what equipment did you use for it?" And he's like, Ableton. And I just remember just being like, yeah, it doesn't have to be like so uh, foreign. It can be, you can use something that everyone uses and still make a special sounding product.
Now, to that end, right? So I'm listening to some of the expansive tracks on Letters from Emptiness, like songs like the act of seeing with one's own eyes, and the I think it's 13 minutes letters from the world of emptiness, right? So I'm thinking, like, especially a lot of other electronic, composers that I like listening to Kraftwerk's Autobahn, it's like 22 minutes long. It's like, how are they putting all of this together, right? So are all the more expansive tracks from the new clairaudience album, are they built out of just a DAW like Ableton, or are you using like hardware, for lack of a better term?
Well, I'm playing guitar, and I'm playing
Yeah.
guitar through an amplifier and pedals. So there's always a very live element to it all. I'm playing an instrument. It's not like I am using some electronic sounds, but I'm like creating most of it like through like a tube amplifier. So we'll always have that live element to it. But like yeah, like but it's all kind of recorded differently. Like you mentioned, Letters from the World of Emptiness, which is the one that my friend Kieran Aurora is an incredible producer. That, also plays on. And that track, I just recorded that on a Zoom mic in this room that you see right here. I just had an amplifier going, and I had a Zoom mic, and then that's it. And then he put some music on top of it, and then that's the track. So not all of it was like this stuff that was like tinkered with in Ableton, and like that has a bunch of different plugins on it. Like some of it's just like very raw. But then yeah, something like the act of seeing with one's own eyes. Um, you know, I recorded the guitar, and then I must have put like 5 or 6 different like drum kits over it until one felt right. And then I decided to keep it going longer at the end, and maybe give it a little coda at the end. And then I was putting vocals on top of it, and it just kept on growing from just like kind of a root kind of guitar part that was to a click track. So yeah, it all kind of manifests differently, but both felt equally natural. But yeah, I actually recall a moment. Speaking of electronic music, it was Bookworms. He's a amazing producer, Nicholas Dawson, and I was eavesdropping on a conversation he was having with somebody about his album, and people were like, I forget what record it was, but they're like, "Yeah, this album, like, it's so good. Like, how did you get this one track on this one song?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that was just an iPhone recording, and that's like track one on his album." So you don't whatever gets you there, and I think like combining these things that are like more rough sounding with something that's more polished sounding is kind of where a lot of that magic can happen.
Have you ever thought about doing a project that's like pure synthesizers?
Yeah, I've definitely messed around with synthesizers a fair bit. Um, in the time after Heaven's Gate, I was producing a lot of electronic music under kind of different monikers, and I did do an album under my Isn't Ours moniker. Just only one of these records, but I did one ambient synthesizer record. It's called Laurel Leaves. It's on Spotify, or YouTube is probably a better place to listen to it, or Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, don't do it on Spotify. Bandcamp is the way to go. But I
Yeah.
think it's on Bandcamp. I think it's on Bandcamp twice actually. I think there's two different pages for it. But Laurel Leaves. Um, but then I kind of like for that project, it became more of a techno project, and that was just kind of like a one-off like ambient thing that I made during the pandemic. Um, but that kind of also had some blueprint juice to it that I feel like is now what clairaudience is doing. So I don't think I would be against doing like a clairaudience like ambient synth kind of record at any point. That could probably happen.
So as far as like the live experience is concerned for Claire audience, right? What should people expect?
I can kind of do it two ways.
Hmm.
There's a full band that I have now. That's like the clairaudience full band, and that's what probably what I'm most excited about. It's like an electronic music band. My friend Carly plays the drum machine and samplers. I play the guitar. My friend Alex plays the bass, and I have two singers, Lonnie Combia Capel and Jess Paps. Um,
Legends.
so it's really great. It's a very powerful group, and it kind of has been fueling more and more music to be made with this project. Like I put out the album in May, and like we just since like forming the band to like perform the songs from the album, like we've written so much new stuff. So we're gonna have like a follow up EP or maybe a full length like soon. But then to that end, I also have been doing some solo shows. They're much more ambient, much more long form. So I like recently prepared for a performance in Kingston where I did a more long form ambient set. And so I think like any releases that will come will kind of be a mixture of this like full band kind of more song oriented tracks and this more like long form ambient music.
So when it comes to a lot of like ambient and drone type of music, how do you feel like you are maintaining the audience intention with that? Because it's so atmospheric that it's like it's easy to kind of like divert your attention elsewhere.
Sure, it's I'm just creating an experience, and then people can have whatever ride they want with it. I hope they're feeling something. Jackson Pollock, when he was asked about his art, he said he didn't want to paint like portraits; he just wanted to paint feelings. And that's kind of what I've always been after with music. Um, and I think, like, if anything, I'm just giving people a place to be with themselves and to, explore how they feel and how they're interacting with the music. Um, I really, I like, I like that everyone has their own unique experience, but I also, it's not something I try to harp on too much when I'm performing. Like I'll consider what I'm going to play before I play it. Like for this sleepover show I did in Kingston, I knew I wanted to play something more mellow, something more long form, something people could potentially sleep to. But then when I'm in the act of playing, I don't want to have to think about what I'm doing for people. At that point, I should already know what I'm going to be doing. So in most cases, I'm just like kind of creating the architecture for other people to have their experience. That's served me pretty well.
Yeah, right. Because when I'm listening to it, it's it's your painting, but like we can all interpret it differently, right? Um, but you're right on the feelings thing. Like it makes you feel something. There's a certain like environment there's a picture that's painted. Like it's really interesting because I was telling Lonnie like a lot of this type of music is not like my go-to, but there was something about clairaudience that I was very that was gravitated towards because I also like electronic music too, but a lot of the music I like touches upon ambiance, but it's not full on ambiance. But This is like more full on ambiance, but there is something interesting about it that I find fascinating. Yeah, it's a really interesting listen. I highly recommend whomever's listening to definitely check it out.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. So I want your thought. We were talking a little bit about Spotify, Bandcamp, etc. A lot of artists, especially more on the independent side, have been bowing out of Spotify. What are your thoughts on that? Are you planning to do the same?
I haven't made any firm declaration whether I'm going to do the same or not, but I definitely support it for sure.
Hmm.
Take back your means of productions for music in any way possible. It's what you should be should be doing as artists. You know, there is like the side of thinking is like you want to just it to be available to the most people as possible, but also as an artist, you have the responsibility of being intentional about how you release things. And so, yeah, maybe for my next release, it won't be on Spotify, but I haven't kind of thought that far ahead yet. But it is definitely, I, I see more of a business model with other ways of streaming music and with selling music. Like I put out a cassette for this release, and then you have the high quality, download with it. That's pretty great. I love, you don't have to be able to listen to it everywhere. It's kind of more special if you can't listen to it everywhere. But we'll see. I've not made any firm declaration with how I'm gonna run that yet.
What is kshack? Kshack is the label that you put the new clairaudience album on, right?
Yeah. So kshack is my long-term creative partner, Jeremy Crinsley and I's digital label. We primarily have been putting out electronic music.
Cool.
Uh, yeah, and we've been going for 3 years now. We've had some really great releases. We've had put out a lot of remixes. It's like primarily like New York artists, but we are working on getting some non-New York artists to put out their releases. But then we've been having like remixes from people from all over. And so, yeah, that's been an incredible project. Um, Kind of getting at what you're saying, talking about with Spotify, just kind of like having this avenue where we just can put out whatever music we want. We don't have to like work with some kind of outside label, and we trying to like kind of cultivate a community with our friends who are producers who might feel they need their stuff to get out there. So it's been a really beautiful experience, and especially putting out other people's music, it just has felt really rewarding. Um, and I'm just like happy to be able to listen to it and put it out.
Yep, yep. Mike, I want to thank you so much for coming on My Little Underground to talk all things clairaudience and kshack. This is your time to plug anything you got going on, live shows, where people can buy the album, etc.
Yeah. Well, kshack, we got some surprises in store, but I think those might be 2026 surprises. So keep your eye on kshack early
Cool.
on. We got a bunch of albums that are nearly at completion. So it'll be a loud year for us. Clairaudience, we are recording now. I just played a few shows, and we have been recording some of the new material from these shows. So expect something in the near future. TBD exactly when that's going to come out. But then, yeah. So yeah, there's going to be new music all across. And then me and, as you know, my wife Lonnie, we're going to go see My Bloody Valentine this month. So that's pretty cool.
Whoa, hold the phone, Mike. Hold the phone. Where? Where are you? They're
all
playing in
things.
Europe, right?
Yeah, we're going to the UK to see them like twice in Glasgow and in Manchester. So I'll get to do the UK thing and see my shoegaze heroes, and maybe I'll come back with some transmission from them that I can put into my new record.
Amazing. Amazing. I They have to come back to the States. I know Kevin Shields has been teasing some new My Bloody Valentine stuff and another tour. They reissued all their albums on Domino. Like it's time. It's time, man.
Maybe next year, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you talking to me again. Have a safe trip to Europe.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Appreciate Oh,
All right, Mike. Take care.
you will.
My Little Underground.